Welcome to Sissy Fantasy World, where every story sparkles. Don't forget to subscribe for more magic. The first command. I never expected a single glance to change everything. Ms. Harper's eyes met mine the moment I stepped into the classroom, calm, precise, and almost unnervingly sharp, like she could see every secret I had hidden from myself. My chest tightened, my palms grew damp, and the air around me seemed heavier than usual. I felt exposed, yet oddly drawn to her command. "You're late," she said, her voice quiet, but it cut through the silence like a whip. Not angry, not scolding, just deliberate. Every word felt measured, exact. "Come here." I moved before I could even think, like my body had learned obedience without my consent. My legs felt like lead, yet I obeyed, unable to stop. She crouched slightly, aligning her gaze with mine. "Do you know why you're here?" "To learn," I whispered, my voice trembled. She smiled faintly. Not warm, not cold, just knowing. "To learn more than you realize, to see who you truly are when no one is watching." Her words settled into me like fire beneath ice. I didn't understand why my stomach twisted and my heart raced simultaneously. Fear, excitement, something that felt new, dangerous, and utterly consuming. She guided me through small tasks, arranging books and supplies with meticulous precision, folding papers into perfect squares, tying small ribbons with painstaking care. Each correction she offered was soft yet exacting, enough to make my heartbeat echo in my ears. I stumbled once, and she placed her hand lightly on my shoulder. "Focus, Danny. Precision matters, but so does understanding yourself." Every action I performed under her watchful eyes made me confront something within me. How much I craved guidance, approval, the sensation of being shaped. I hated the feeling that I wanted to impress her, that I wanted her to see me not as the boy I was, but as something more malleable, delicate, refined. By the end of the period, she watched silently, her expression unreadable. "Good. We'll continue tomorrow. Remember, Danny, obedience is not weakness. It is power. You'll see how much strength there is in surrender." I left the classroom trembling, my mind alive with confusion, exhilaration, and a curiosity I couldn't name. At home, I stared at my reflection. The familiar boy in the mirror looked back at me, but something in my eyes had changed. I wasn't fully Danny yet, not even close, but a seed had been planted. A quiet, unstoppable force whispering that nothing would ever be the same. Tomorrow, I told myself, tomorrow it begins again. The guidance begins. The next day, my stomach was a storm of nerves and anticipation. Even walking toward the classroom, my palms felt clammy, and my heart kept racing. Every time I passed the windowed hallway, I caught glimpses of my reflection, shy, uncertain, and still clinging to the boy I thought I had to be. Ms. Harper was waiting, calm as ever, but there was a new edge to her gaze today. Not harsh, but expectant, as if she was silently asking whether I was ready to face more than just the day's lessons. "Good morning, Danny," she said quietly, her voice steady. "I'm glad you came prepared." I nodded, unsure how to respond. "Yes, Ms. Harper." She walked toward her desk and placed a small bundle of scarves, ribbons, and simple accessories on the table. "Today," she said, "we'll explore how presentation can change how you feel, how you see yourself." My eyes widened. I wasn't sure I understood, but there was a spark of curiosity, something that had begun yesterday, a whisper in my chest saying this matters. "Start with something small," she instructed. "Choose a scarf, just one, put it on and tell me how it feels." I hesitated, then picked a soft pink scarf and wrapped it loosely around my neck. Immediately, I felt lighter. My shoulders seemed to release some tension I hadn't noticed I'd been holding. My reflection in the window caught me, and I barely recognized the person looking back. A little softer, a little more confident. "Good," Ms. Harper said, watching me closely. "Notice how small changes can influence your mood, your presence, and even your confidence. It's not about impressing anyone. It's about acknowledging the person you've always wanted to be." As the class progressed, she guided me through simple exercises, standing taller, walking with deliberate steps, adjusting posture, practicing calm, natural gestures. Each motion made me aware of my body in a way I had never considered. Every movement became an experiment, a way to test the edges of who I was. By the end of the session, I felt strange but exhilarated. Exhausted, but not from exertion, from the intensity of noticing myself in every detail, from confronting the truth that the boy I had always been was only part of my story. Walking home that afternoon, I replayed her words over and over. It's not about impressing anyone. It's about acknowledging the person you've always wanted to be. For the first time, I realized this wasn't just about scarves, posture, or appearance. It was about learning to inhabit myself fully, without fear, without apology. And deep inside, I knew I wanted tomorrow to come, to learn more, to see how far I could step into this new version of me. Reflections in motion. The morning light fell gently through the classroom windows, painting soft golden stripes across the floor. I felt a flutter of nervous excitement in my chest as I approached the door. Each step echoed slightly, a quiet drumbeat reminding me that today would be different. Yesterday's lessons lingered in my mind, vivid and strange, a mixture of trepidation, curiosity, and a tiny spark of joy I wasn't used to feeling. Ms. Harper was already there, arranging the materials on her desk with that calm precision she always had. She glanced up, and her eyes met mine. "Ready to continue?" she asked. Her voice was quiet, but it carried that same sense of expectation, like she was asking not just about my readiness for class, but about my willingness to meet myself. I swallowed and nodded. "Yes, Ms. Harper." "Good," she said. "Today we'll focus on movement, how you carry yourself, how posture and gestures influence how you feel, and how the world perceives you." I wasn't sure I fully understood, but there was an undeniable pull toward whatever she was teaching. She asked me to stand in the center of the room, feet slightly apart, spine straight but relaxed. Then she demonstrated a series of small, deliberate movements, raising arms slowly, turning, walking across the floor with purpose. Her motions were graceful, confident, yet utterly natural. Watching her, I felt something awaken inside me, a quiet awareness that my body could do more than I had ever allowed it to. When it was my turn, I tried to imitate her. At first, I stumbled, my movements awkward and unsure. My reflection in the large classroom windows seemed alien. The boy I had been, hesitant and rigid, blinked back at me. But each repetition felt a little different. Each adjustment a little smoother, a little freer. My chest rose and fell, not just with the effort of moving, but with a strange, subtle pride I hadn't expected to feel. Ms. Harper walked beside me, her hand occasionally brushing my elbow to correct a position, a touch that was guiding, not commanding. "Notice how your shoulders relax when you lift your head. Notice the difference when you allow your hands to float naturally. Movement changes perception, Danny, and perception changes reality." Her words echoed in my mind as I continued to move. I began to experiment, turning slowly, letting my hair catch the light, shifting my gaze from the floor to the reflection beside me. With each motion, I felt a fragment of the person I wanted to become, a more confident, delicate, and authentic self, taking shape. After nearly an hour, we paused. I was sweating lightly, my body tired, but my mind was electrified. I felt as though I had stepped into a different dimension of myself, one I had never fully explored. For the first time, I realized that transformation wasn't just about clothing or appearance. It was about inhabiting the body and soul you had always imagined. Ms. Harper handed me a scarf, a soft, pale lavender one. "Try this," she said. "Wear it as you move. Let it become part of your motion, part of your reflection." I wrapped it loosely around my neck, feeling the delicate fabric against my skin. Instantly, a new awareness coursed through me. I moved differently now, lighter, freer, and somehow more visible, not to anyone else, but to myself. The reflection staring back at me was no longer wholly the boy I had been, nor the uncertain version I had glimpsed yesterday. It was someone in between, fragile but alive, tentative but undeniable. For the first time, I found myself smiling at my own reflection. Not awkwardly, not hesitantly, but truly, deeply. I didn't recognize myself entirely, but I liked what I saw. The transformation, I realized, was no longer something imposed. It was becoming something I wanted, something I could shape with each gesture, each motion, each day. As the class ended, Ms. Harper spoke softly, almost like she was letting me hear a secret meant only for me. Every step, every movement, every small choice leads you closer to who you are meant to be. Don't rush it, but don't hide from it either. Walking home, I felt the wind brush against my face and through my hair in a way that made my heart flutter. Each reflection I passed in shop windows caught me unprepared. My posture slightly straighter, my steps lighter, my presence somehow altered. The world hadn't changed, but I had. Every reflection whispered possibilities, and for the first time I felt the quiet thrill of becoming someone wholly my own. That night I lay in bed and thought of the scarf, of the way my body had moved, of the gentle, guiding presence of Miss Harper. Transformation, I realized, was more than appearance. It was a dance of courage, awareness, and self-acceptance. And tomorrow I would move again, a little closer to the person I was meant to be. Stepping into myself. The morning was unusually quiet, the kind of stillness that makes every sound, every movement feel magnified. I approached the classroom, scarf in hand, heart hammering with anticipation. Yesterday's lessons replayed in my mind like a film I couldn't pause. My movements, my reflection, the subtle thrill of noticing a new self taking shape. Ms. Harper was already there, waiting by her desk. She didn't need to say anything. The look in her eyes was enough, expectant, knowing, and somehow patient. "Good morning, Danny," she said, voice soft yet charged with authority. "Are you ready to continue?" "Yes," I whispered, my voice trembling slightly. "Good, today we focus on expression." She gestured toward a small mirror she had set on the table. "Not just movement, not just posture, expression. How you allow the world to see pieces of you, how you allow yourself to feel seen." I approached the mirror cautiously, the scarf brushing lightly against my shoulders. I stared at the reflection before me, softened by yesterday's practice, but still tentative, still unsure. I tilted my head, lifted my chin, adjusted my shoulders. I could feel her watching, guiding without intruding. "Now," Ms. Harper said, "add something personal, something that speaks to you, that reflects who you are becoming." My fingers hovered over the table. Among pencils, notebooks, and scarves, one small, delicate ribbon caught my eye. It was pale pink, almost shimmering in the morning light. I picked it up, tied it gently around my wrist, and instantly felt a quiet shift. Something about the softness of the fabric, the gentle color, made my heartbeat skip. I felt acknowledged, seen. Ms. Harper smiled faintly. "Good. Notice how that small choice changes your awareness. Even the smallest details have power over perception and emotion. Every gesture, every accessory, every line you follow in your own expression adds to the story of who you are." I nodded, trying to absorb every word, every nuance. Then she asked me to move again, walk across the room, turn slowly, lift my hands, adjust my posture, all while letting the ribbon and scarf become part of the motion. At first, I stumbled. My movements were hesitant, unsure, almost clumsy. But gradually, I felt a rhythm emerge. My steps felt lighter. My reflection seemed to respond in kind, softer, more deliberate, more mine. Each time I turned, each small motion, I felt fragments of the person I wanted to be solidifying, becoming tangible. When I glanced at Ms. Harper, she gave the faintest nod of approval. That single gesture, so subtle, made my chest tighten in a mix of pride and anticipation. I had begun to trust not just her guidance, but myself. The real test came when she asked me to speak. "Look into the mirror," she instructed. "Say your name as if it belongs entirely to you. Speak as the person you are becoming, not the person you were." I hesitated. My throat felt tight. My hands shook slightly. But I remembered the scarf, the ribbon, the deliberate movements I had practiced. Taking a deep breath, I said, "I am Danny." The words felt foreign at first, then familiar, then undeniable. I spoke them again, louder this time, letting the sound fill the quiet classroom. And something in the mirror shifted. Not the reflection itself, but the feeling, the acknowledgement of a self I had only glimpsed before. Miss Harper's eyes softened. "There," she said. "You see, each small step, each intentional act brings you closer to yourself. You are learning not just to move, but to exist deliberately in your own skin." I left the classroom that day with a strange mixture of exhaustion and exhilaration. Walking home, I noticed the way the wind caught my hair, the way my scarf floated slightly with each step. The city felt different, brighter somehow, as if my eyes were adjusting not just to light but to perception, how I perceived myself in the world. At home, I tried on different scarves and ribbons, experimenting with colors and textures, movements and expressions. My reflection became a study, a playground, a companion. The boy I had once been watched quietly, fatting in subtle increments, while Danny, the person I was choosing, shaping, and embracing, grew stronger with every deliberate choice. And late that night, as I lay in bed, I realized something profound. Transformation wasn't just a series of lessons. It was a dialogue with oneself, a process of seeing, acknowledging, and stepping into a version of me I had only ever dared to imagine. Tomorrow would bring more guidance, more learning, more moments of discovery. But tonight, I allowed myself to revel quietly in the small, significant victory of claiming a piece of my identity, of choosing Danny. First steps outside. The air felt different that morning, charged with anticipation and a hint of fear I couldn't shake. Today wasn't about scarves or mirrors or gentle guidance in the classroom. Today, Ms. Harper had something new in mind. I would move beyond the safety of her instruction and into the world outside, carrying pieces of Danny with me for the first time. I arrived at school earlier than usual, adjusting the pale lavender scarf around my neck and checking the small ribbon on my wrist. I had practiced my posture and movements all week, letting them become second nature in private. But now, every step toward the entrance felt monumental. Each footfall echoed louder than normal, a reminder that the world outside the classroom was unpredictable, untested. Ms. Harper met me at the doorway, calm and composed as ever. "Are you ready?" she asked. Not a challenge, not a test, just a quiet, expectant presence. "I think so," I said, my voice barely steady. My hands were clammy, my stomach twisting, but I nodded. She smiled just faintly and gestured toward the schoolyard. "Today, we practice presence, how to inhabit yourself with confidence, even when others are watching. Not for approval, not for praise, but for your own acknowledgement. You carry Danny with you now, not just here in my classroom." I took a deep breath, feeling the scarf brush my shoulders, and stepped outside. The sun was bright, a little too bright, as though spotlighting every movement. Students milled about, oblivious, laughing, chatting, completely unaware of the internal storm raging inside me. Every glance felt like it could pierce my carefully constructed composure. My steps felt heavier at first, hesitant, each one a silent negotiation with my own nerves. Ms. Harper walked beside me, not holding my hand, not touching me, but somehow her presence made the space around me feel safe. She guided me in subtle ways, reminding me to straighten my shoulders, lift my chin, make eye contact with the world, even for a fraction of a second. "Notice how people react," she whispered. "Not everyone will notice, but those who do. It's your presence, not their perception, that matters." I nodded, focusing on each movement, each small gesture, trying to feel the rhythm she had been teaching me in class. It was exhausting, in a way I hadn't expected, not physically, but emotionally. Every motion carried weight, significance, a quiet assertion of self I was only beginning to understand. A group of students passed nearby, chatting loudly. I felt my pulse quicken. For a moment, I wanted to shrink into myself, to disappear. But then I remembered the mirror, the scarf, the ribbon, the lessons of yesterday and today. Danny deserved more than hiding. Danny deserved to be seen, even if only briefly. I lifted my head, squared my shoulders, and walked past them. I noticed one girl glance at me, eyes flickering with curiosity, then forward again. No mockery, no comments, just a brief acknowledgement. And in that moment, a small surge of courage blossomed inside me, fragile but real. Ms. Harper watched with a quiet satisfaction, her eyes encouraging but never intrusive. "Good," she murmured. "Every step, every decision builds your identity. Even small victories count." The walk back to class was transformative. I caught my reflection in a car window and almost didn't recognize myself. My posture had shifted subtly, my head held higher, my movements lighter. The scarf fluttered slightly in the breeze, and I realized I was walking not as the boy I had been, not as a timid observer of life, but as Danny, deliberate, aware, and inching closer to the person I wanted to be. Back in the classroom, I let myself breathe. My body relaxed, but my mind hummed with exhilaration. I had stepped outside and the world hadn't collapsed. I had carried Danny with me, and she had been noticed, subtly, fleetingly, but undeniably. That night, I stared at my reflection for hours. I experimented with small changes, adjusting my scarf, trying a slightly different hairstyle, letting my shoulders fall more naturally. Each adjustment felt profound, as if every micro-decision was a brushstroke painting the canvas of my true self. And as I drifted off to sleep, I felt something I hadn't before, a quiet, unwavering hope. Danny was no longer just a dream. She was real. Each day, each lesson, each small venture into the world brought me closer to the person I had always wanted to become. The transformation wasn't complete, far from it, but the first steps outside had shown me the thrill, the difficulty, and the undeniable beauty of claiming my own identity. And tomorrow, I knew, would offer even more challenges, even more discoveries, even more moments where I would confront who I was and who I wanted to be. The first challenge. The next morning, I felt a strange mix of excitement and dread as I got ready. Today would be different, not just classroom exercises or private reflection, but a real interaction with someone outside the familiar guidance of Ms. Harper. The scarf was pale lavender, the ribbon a soft pink. My hair was brushed carefully, my posture deliberately straight. I was trying to be Danny as fully as I could manage. Walking toward the schoolyard, my heart beat faster than I expected. Every step felt heavier because it wasn't just movement, it was a statement. I wasn't just walking, I was presenting myself, putting pieces of Danny into the world and hoping they would be accepted. Ms. Harper met me at the entrance, calm as always. She didn't smile, didn't give advice, just that quiet presence that somehow made the space around her feel safe. "Today," she said softly, "you will interact with someone outside of our lessons, someone who doesn't know you yet. Observe, respond, and stay present. Let your awareness guide you." My stomach twisted. Interacting with someone new was always nerve-wracking. But now, with the weight of identity pressing on me, it felt monumental. I nodded, trying to steady my trembling hands. A student from another class approached, carrying a stack of books. He glanced at me, and for a moment I froze, unsure how to respond. My mind raced. Do I smile? Nod? Speak? Will he notice the scarf, the ribbon? Will he judge me? Ms. Harper gave me a quiet nod from the sidelines. That was all I needed. I straightened my shoulders, lifted my chin, and greeted him. "Good morning," I said clearly, the words trembling slightly at first, then growing steadier as they left my mouth. He looked surprised for a moment, but he smiled politely. "Morning," he replied, nodding. It was simple, ordinary, but in that ordinary exchange I felt a thrill. Danny had stepped out and she had been acknowledged. No judgment, no ridicule, just recognition. We exchanged a few words about classes, about the weather, small talk that seemed ordinary but felt monumental in my mind. Each time I spoke, I felt a little more present, a little more solid in the version of myself I was cultivating. When the conversation ended, I realized I was smiling without thinking about it. The tension that had gripped me moments before had melted, replaced by a quiet pride. I had engaged, been noticed, and survived. Not just survived, but participated fully as Danny. Ms. Harper approached after the interaction, her expression calm but approving. "You see," she said softly, "it's not about impressing anyone else. It's about being present fully in your own skin. Each small step builds confidence and awareness. Today, you succeeded." Walking back toward the classroom, I noticed the way my movements felt different. Lighter, yet deliberate. Stronger, yet soft. The scarf brushed my shoulder, the ribbon caught the light, and in that small reflection, I saw more of Danny than ever before. The rest of the day passed in a blur of subtle experiments. How I moved between classrooms, how I carried myself in the cafeteria, how I adjusted my voice slightly when speaking. Each choice felt deliberate, significant, and transformative. By the time I returned home, exhaustion mixed with exhilaration. That evening, I looked in the mirror again. Danny was becoming tangible, not just a reflection of who I wanted to be, but a real presence within me. My shoulders were straighter, my gaze steadier, my hands lighter and more expressive. And for the first time, I felt not just curiosity about who I was becoming, but a quiet, resolute pride. Tomorrow, I knew, would be another challenge. But after today, I also knew something else. Every small interaction, every deliberate gesture, every mindful choice was slowly shaping Danny into someone strong, deliberate, and undeniable. And I couldn't wait to see what the next step would teach me about myself. Testing boundaries. The morning sun spilled through my window in thin golden lines, painting the floor with warmth I didn't quite feel yet in my chest. Today was different. Today, Ms. Harper had told me we would explore expression beyond the classroom, and the thought sent a thrill of nervousness twisting through me. I dressed carefully, choosing a scarf in soft lilac, paired with a ribbon that shimmered pale pink. I had practiced movements, posture, and small gestures in private, but now the idea of stepping into a shared space, the hallway, the lunchroom, even the crowded courtyard, made my heart pound. Each deliberate action felt like a statement. I am Danny, and I will exist in the world as her. Ms. Harper met me at the doorway, her calm presence grounding me. "Danny," she said softly, "today you will explore visibility. Not for attention, not for praise, but for acknowledgement of yourself. You've practiced privately. Now I want you to practice publicly, deliberately, with awareness." I nodded, gripping the scarf nervously, and walked into the hallway. The corridor was alive with chatter and footsteps, lockers slamming, voices overlapping. I felt exposed, my reflection in the windows along the walls catching my eye. I straightened my shoulders, lifted my chin, and stepped forward deliberately. At first, it was terrifying. I noticed a group of students laughing near a locker. My impulse was to shrink, to tuck myself away, to disappear. But I remembered Ms. Harper's words, acknowledgement of yourself, not others. I inhaled, let my body relax, and passed them. A few glanced at me briefly, curiosity flickering in their eyes. No judgment, no ridicule, just recognition, fleeting but real. The courtyard was next, and here the challenge multiplied. Students scattered in groups, some walking purposefully, some lounging. I tried to keep my steps deliberate, my gestures gentle but confident. The scarf fluttered slightly in the breeze, the ribbon catching sunlight. I felt conspicuous, and for the first time that awareness wasn't frightening, it was electric, invigorating. Ms. Harper followed at a distance, never intruding, just present. "Notice your reactions," she whispered when I paused. "Notice your breath. Notice the way your posture affects your confidence. Visibility is a skill, Danny. You're practicing the art of being present." I walked past a bench where a small group of students were chatting. One girl looked up, tilting her head, studying me briefly, then smiled. My chest tightened in surprise. I hadn't expected acknowledgement to feel so validating. For a moment, I imagined myself invisible, then realized I didn't want to be. I wanted to exist fully, intentionally, and Danny deserved to occupy space unapologetically. By the time I returned to the classroom, I was exhausted but exhilarated. Every step, every glance, every small conscious movement had been a test, and I had survived. More than that, I had grown. I had begun to inhabit Danny's presence outside the controlled environment of the classroom. Ms. Harper's eyes softened as I approached. "Well done," she said. "You've begun to internalize presence. The next stage will challenge you even more, not just in movement or posture, but in expression, dialogue, and the courage to inhabit yourself completely." That night, I experimented further at home. I practiced gestures in front of the mirror, small, deliberate movements that carried meaning. How my hands fell, how my shoulders curved, how my head tilted when I smiled. Each adjustment strengthened Danny's presence, and with it, my confidence. I realized something profound. Transformation wasn't just about clothes or gestures. It was about awareness, about choosing how to occupy space, about embracing visibility and courage. Every micro-decision I made, from scarf placement to posture to movement, was a brushstroke painting Danny into existence. And as I lay in bed that night, my reflection from yesterday still lingering in my mind, I understood. The world outside the classroom wasn't a threat. It was a canvas. And Danny, finally, was ready to step fully onto it. The greatest test. The morning was heavy with expectation, the kind that pressed into your chest and made your heart thrum in ways you hadn't anticipated. Today, Ms. Harper told me, would be the most challenging exercise yet. Not movement, not posture, not scarves or ribbons, but presence in the face of uncertainty. Danny would be tested in her own awareness, her own courage. I dressed carefully, choosing a soft lavender scarf and the pale pink ribbon I had grown fond of. Each accessory felt symbolic now, not decorative. They were markers of progress, reminders of each small step I had taken this week. My hair was brushed meticulously, my shoulders lifted, my chin slightly raised. I felt the tension in my chest, the nervous energy coiling like a spring. When I arrived, Ms. Harper's gaze met mine, calm, steady, and unwavering. "Today," she said, "you will move through the school corridors during a passing period, not just with awareness, but with intention. You will maintain presence while surrounded by others who do not know you, who may not understand." My stomach twisted. Passing periods were chaotic, unpredictable, a cacophony of voices, lockers slamming, hurried footsteps. Every instinct in me screamed to hide, to shrink, to retreat. But the whisper in my mind, the small voice that had grown steadily stronger all week, said, "Danny belongs in this space. Danny has the right to exist." The first step into the corridor was terrifying. Students surged around me, laughing, talking, slamming locker doors. I felt small, exposed. For a moment, panic threatened to overtake me. But I remembered Ms. Harper's instructions: awareness, intention, presence. I straightened my shoulders, lifted my chin, and began walking deliberately. Every movement felt amplified. The scarf brushed my shoulder. The ribbon glimmered in the overhead lights. My steps echoed slightly against the linoleum floor. I made eye contact with passing students, not too much, not too little, just enough to acknowledge their presence and, more importantly, to acknowledge my own. A few glanced at me with curiosity. Some didn't notice at all. One boy muttered something under his breath, but it didn't matter. I had already realized something profound. Danny didn't exist for their approval. She existed because I had chosen to claim her space, her presence, her identity. Ms. Harper followed discreetly, her eyes warm with encouragement but never intrusive. "Notice your reactions," she whispered. "Notice your breath, your heartbeat, your awareness. These are your tools. Your presence is your power." Halfway down the corridor, I caught my reflection in a window. The person looking back at me was confident, deliberate, and undeniably Danny. Not fully complete, still learning, still growing, but real, tangible, and present. My chest swelled with a strange, powerful pride. I was no longer the hesitant boy who had entered the classroom days ago. I was someone emerging fully into her own identity. By the time I returned to Ms. Harper, my legs were tired, my mind buzzing, but my heart was lighter than it had ever been. "Well done," she said softly. "You have faced the world and held your presence. That is not easy. It requires courage, awareness, and trust in yourself, and you have shown all three." At home that evening, I examined myself in the mirror again. Each gesture, each movement, each deliberate choice had left an imprint on me. Danny was no longer a fragile possibility. She was a living, breathing reality. Every scarf, every ribbon, every practiced step had built layers of identity that were mine to claim and shape. And lying in bed that night, I realized the journey wasn't about perfection. It wasn't about flawless movements or perfect presentation. It was about courage, awareness, and the relentless act of existing fully as oneself. Danny had taken her greatest test, and she had not faltered. The final step, the ultimate act of self-acceptance, awaited tomorrow. And for the first time, I wasn't afraid. I was ready. In history class, we learned that the Industrial Revolution changed the way people worked and lived. It introduced new machinery, improved transportation, and led to the growth of cities. It was a pivotal moment in shaping the modern world.